Hey friends, Ginny D here, and today we're talking about how to sew fur trim like I used on my holiday jester costume. I'll show you two methods today, one for trimming a lined garment and another for an unlined garment. First, cut your fur into strips that match the length of the seam that you're trimming. Your trim can be as thick or as thin as you like, but I generally like my trim to be about 2 inches wide, so I cut 4-inch strips. If you're making a lined garment, you'll have 2 layers of fabric, the fashion layer and the lining layer. You'll want to attach the fur trim at the stage where you would normally attach the lining to the fashion layer. Start by folding the fur in half, wrong sides together, and using a zigzag stitch to secure it. I'm using a contrasting thread color here so that you can see what I'm doing, but you'll want to match your thread to your fur. Now, sandwich your fur in between the lining and the fashion layer, right sides together. Make sure the seam that you zigzagged is placed at the hem. Pin that seam and sew it, making sure that your seam allowance is wide enough that it'll cover the zigzag. Now, turn your garment and fluff the fur to make sure it isn't caught in the seam. You should now have fur trim that looks neat and clean from either side. If you want the seam to lay flatter, you might choose to top stitch that seam with a thread that matches your fabric. For an unlined garment, the steps are a little different. Start by pinning your fur trim to your fabric, right sides together, and sew. Next, flip the fur trim to the other side and pin it just above your seam so that it conceals the seam. Now take a hand needle and thread that matches your fur. Use a whip stitch or a hemming stitch to anchor it. You'll want to make sure that you're anchoring the fur to the seam allowance from your machine-sewn seam. If you just sew straight through the body of the garment, your stitches will be visible from the front. When you're done, you should have fur trim that looks neat and nice from either side. I hope this helps you sew some cute fur-trimmed costumes. Good luck, and don't forget to subscribe for more sewing and cosplay tutorials.